Hi, and welcome to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving, a podcast series by Tharaka Foundation focused on youth mental health. Before we begin today's episode, I just wanted to let you all know that all content that is found in our podcast is created for informational purposes only. This content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, treatment, or therapy. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition, and never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard in this podcast. Thank you so much, and without further ado, let's get started.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving. It's your host, Seerat, here today with an exceptional guest, Dr. Jo Boaler. She does research at Stanford and about learning environments in mathematics classrooms, has co-founded YouCubed and Struggly, and is the author of 19 books, including Mindset Mathematics, a K through 8 curriculum, What's Math Got to Do with It, and her latest release, Mathish, Finding Creativity, Diversity, and Meaning in Mathematics. Before we dive any deeper, Dr. Boaler, please introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Jo Boaler. I am a professor at Stanford University, co-founder of YouCubed, and a new online platform called Struggly.
Wow. What inspired you to do research about teaching and learning environments at K through 12 schools?
I've known for a long time that we're not teaching maths in a lot of places. It's not being taught too well, and that it's being taught as just lists of procedures. And some people like that approach and really are into it. So I wanted to really carefully set up experiments where students were taught in that procedural way, and when they were taught through a more open way with creative maths, and see what happened and see what the outcomes were for the students in terms of exam scores and in terms of their beliefs. And that started my career doing that kind of experimental work. And I did that in schools in the UK and then in schools in the US. Both had the same outcomes, that when students were able to discuss and reason and see more creative tasks, they did better.
Wait, that's really cool. I like how you do experimental work. And so today I want to explore the topic on how to have a limitless mind. Most people say, oh, I don't have a math brain, but it's not like someone can have an English or history brain either. So how can we shift this negative thought into a growth mindset?
I tried very hard to change that idea for people and to help them know their brains. The evidence we have from neuroscience now is that brains are constantly growing, adapting, changing. So I try hard to help people know that their brains aren't fixed. You can learn anything. So my book, Limitless Mind, puts out that message, as do all my other books, and YouCubed puts out that message. And I have an online class for students. I don't know if you know about this. It's about 15-minute sessions. It's free, and over 1 million people have taken it. That also gets out the message. Your brains can do anything. There's no such thing as a maths person. In all sorts of ways, I try and change that message for people.
Wow, that's really cool too. Now, I want to dive deeper into what makes a genius. Robin Sharma defines genius is much less about genetics and more about ridiculous amount of hard work, self-belief, focus, and perseverance in the face of any setback. Albert Einstein says that if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. What do you think? How do you think genius is made?
I love that you're saying, how do we make a genius? I often don't use that word because I think people use it in a very fixed way, that people are born a genius. And so, yes, it comes from hard work. The people who reach those sort of genius levels of understanding have worked really hard. And often it seems, even in cases like Albert Einstein, that they had a really growth mindset, that they saw that failure was part of becoming really high achieving, and that they kept going through failure and they embraced mistakes. Those are the people who seem to get to the highest levels. I agree with the people you just quoted. You can learn your way there if you work really hard and have a growth mindset.
Yeah, I like the part that you said failure is part of it and embracing your mistakes. Because I think, and even I've noticed in your videos, you say that when you're in a mistake and when you're struggling is when your brain is learning more, like a workout. I was listening to one of your podcasts and it said, and one of the ideas you had for teachers was to make classes more interesting by giving tasks that relate to what students like music and sports. So how does this relate to the strength-based approach?
I think we do need to bring in students' interests more in mathematics, and that we should be using not these fake contexts about trains going towards each other and baths filling, but actual real situations where people can see that maths is a tool to use and analyze in the world. The approach, this sort of strengths-based approach, which many in education will call an assets-based approach as well, is to give students really meaningful situations and maths approaches, but also to always build upon what they know and value what they know. Start by valuing their own sort of capacity, their own strengths. When I ask students questions in the classroom, I sometimes do work with middle school students, and whatever answer they give, I value it, because even if somebody answers a question with a wrong answer, there's always some logic to their answer. And I think if teachers can find that, I was in a classroom when a student was really sure that the border of a 10 by 10 figure that had tiles all around it was 40. It's actually not 40, it's 36 because the corner tiles overlap. But she was sure it's 40. And so I said to everybody in the class, Isabella's pointing out something really important. Each side is 10 and there's 4 of them, and that gives us 40. So I take their wrong answers and I value them. And that really helps students. And I think that's a really important part of a strengths-based approach.
Yeah, I liked where you said that you value what they know and say that you understood it, because then they actually feel like heard and you acknowledge their logic. So, in addition to the previous question, how can we use a strength-based approach or the asset-based approach to learn more in all environments, including school, home, and extracurriculars?
I think the approach I describe in my book, Limitless Mind, the approach of having a limitless perspective, really affects you all through life. If you can go through life embracing hard things, embracing challenge, not thinking to yourself, I can't do that, and really getting rid of negative ideas, I'm not good at something, and rephrasing them in your own mind, getting rid of negative self-talk, embracing, as I said, things that are difficult and going for them, then life is better. There are so many times in life that people don't make choices to go ahead because they think they can't. Or maybe somebody puts a roadblock in their way. Maybe somebody says, you can't do this, or you're not good enough to do this. And people with a more limitless perspective say, I'm going to go round that person. I'm going to go round that roadblock because I know I can do it. And so that ends up as being a really great life perspective, that you don't let people put obstacles in your way, and you always have that really strong self-belief.
Yeah, and I just want to add on, I noticed in the previous question and this question, you've been saying embracing challenges, embracing the hard things. So I just want to pop up and ask, how do you embrace like the hard challenges and how can we do that?
I'm a researcher at a university, and I get a lot of challenges in my job. I actually get a lot of people who attack me on social media because they want maths to be kids sitting in rows and just having methods told to them. And they regard me as the one who's changing that in the school system. So they come after me. And a lot of people have said to me, how have you carried on with all of the people attacking you? And that's an example of when I reframe how I feel about it. And something I keep in my mind is, if you're getting such nasty pushback, it's because you're doing something effective to change the system. Because they don't go after people they don't think are actually having impact. So think of it as a sign that you're having impact and it's working, and that's why people are trying to tear you down. It is always about reframing difficult situations, I think.
Yeah, I like the part you said you reframe what's happening, and that if you're getting like a nasty comeback, or that means that you're actually having an impact.
Mhm.
To wrap up, I want to ask you, what advice would you give to youth today, specifically on how they can follow their inner genius?
I would definitely say that you have to know that you can learn anything. So don't feel like you can't go in a particular pathway because somebody has veered you or steered you away from it. And to find different ways to learn what you want to learn. Nowadays, it's not like when I was young and going to school, you really were stuck with the subjects that teachers said you could do, and that's what you learned. But now you can learn anything online. You can really find all sorts of different ways of pursuing what you're interested in. So I guess I would say really hold on to that. Know that there are always ways you can go forward, and really try lots of things, work out what really interests you, and then find ways to learn that and get good ideas from that. You don't always get them in school. So sometimes looking outside of school is important.
Yeah, you mentioned that there's like many opportunities online, and we can always find ways to go forward. I really liked that part. And if I was listening to this podcast, I would immediately want to read your books and listen to your podcast and videos. So how can our audience learn more about you and your work?
We have a website called YouCubed.org, which is probably the best thing to look at. That's you cubed. It's like you to more dimensions. Struggly is the new online platform we have to give a visual creative opportunity, maths opportunity to students. I'm on social media. It's Jo Boaler. I have books. And my new book, Mathish, has just come out. And online, I have something called mathish.org where you can get handouts and different ideas to go along with the book. So there's just a lot of things available online and in books.
I'll definitely check those out too. And thank you so much, Dr. Bowler, for spending your time with us here today to share your perspective on how we can follow our inner genius and learn in a growth mindset and be more engaged. I learned that in mathematics it's called an asset-based approach, and I also learned about your limitless mindset. And I really enjoyed our conversation today, and I hope that our audience did too. Thank you so much for sharing your pearls of wisdom.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
You are listening to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving, a podcast series by Tharaka Foundation. As part of our youth series, we will be releasing new episodes every Friday, so make sure to continue to check those out. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, and thank you so much for listening.